Howdy partners and happy new year. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Alex and you're here at the Firm D Reads. And today, on the last day of 2023, I want to talk about my favorite books of the year. If you watched my last video, that was my least favorite books of the year. So I'm really excited, even more excited than I was in the last video, to talk about my favorite reads of 2023. So let's not do too big of an intro. Again, happy new year. Thank you so much if you're here and you're watching. If you are enjoying my content, please give this video a like and consider subscribing. I will also put my Instagram handle down below at the Firm D Reads as well if you want to follow me over there. But yeah, let's talk about my favorite reads of 2023. I would like to preface this by saying I posted my, I believe, first video on my YouTube channel not really that long ago in October, talking about my favorite reads of the year so far. And because it's only been like 2.5 months later in December, a lot of these are repeats. So I'm not going to go too in depth about plot or what these are about or crazy rambling like I usually do about my thoughts and feelings, because it is New Year's Eve and I literally put makeup on at 7:30 for this. So I want to talk about these books real quick, get this video to you, take this makeup off, and enjoy the last night of this year with my husband and with my animals. What an intro. It went on forever. First, I want to talk about the Mistborn trilogy by B. Sanderson, Brandon Sanderson himself. This trilogy is part of the aforementioned best read so far video, so I'm not going to get too crazy about it, but I absolutely loved these. I cannot wait to read so much more of the Cosmere in 2024. And I'm definitely going to be starting with the Stormlight Archive. I have The Way of Kings, book 1. So yeah, I am totally pumped for 2024 to be the year that I absolutely go batshit crazy and read everything that I can in the Cosmere by Brandon Sanderson. So loved these. And also, I kind of really like these tiny little paperbacks with these covers. So I definitely have some other sets that I've had my eye on, but I don't know, something about these, and I creased them real nice. And I, for one, kind of like creasing my paperbacks because it makes me feel like they're a home that's been lived in, and that makes my heart happy. So yeah, Mistborn, Brandon Sanderson. If you haven't read this, please do. It's fantastic. Next, I want to talk about the first 2 books in the Red Rising saga by Pierce Brown, and that is Red Rising and Golden Sun. I now have the physical copies, but I actually listened to these on audio at the beginning of the year, and I will be honest, the audiobooks / narrator were not my favorite, which is why I wanted to have the physical copies to reread before I continue. I also have Morningstar, you know, in this cover edition, so I've got the first 3 in my hands, and this series is so fantastic. I feel like this has been a year where a lot of people discovered this, and I know that's probably because Lightbringer, which I don't know if it's like this just the next book in the series or if it's the finale, but everyone who has read that book has said it was either their absolute favorite or one of their favorites of this entire year. So I am so excited to, I think, reread these first 2, maybe annotate, I don't know, we'll see, and continue on with the series. And also, I will be doing a video, hopefully soon, of series that I plan to finish in 2024, and this is definitely going to be on that list. If you haven't read this yet, please pick it up. It's sci-fi fantasy at its finest, and the characters are amazing. Really political, character-driven plot. It's phenomenal. Chef's kiss, please read. The next book that I want to talk about is How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu, and I picked this up because Katie Coulson, in a video at some point in time earlier this year, read this book and was talking about how amazing it was, breathtaking, beautiful, writing, like immaculate. So I picked it up, and it was actually one of the first books that I read and like posted about on my Bookstagram when I moved to Denver, Colorado. So I don't know, it kind of like reminds me of a sun-drenched day in my new apartment, like processing all these life changes. I don't know, and it's nostalgic to me in that sense now, but also this is, yes, correct, Katie was correct, a beautifully written book. I kind of want to cry just thinking about it, and I'm actually very excited to reread this in 2024. How High We Go in the Dark is a collection collection of short stories, or like almost an anthology of accounts from different people that are living through a global crisis related to global warming. Basically what happens is global warming causes the ice caps to melt, releasing this bajillion-year-old virus that takes over the world and kills a lot of people, pandemic style. So it hits on a lot of heart-wrenching subjects that a lot of us have really close experience with. And what I loved about it is that the stories were all separate, but then at the end you see how they were all interconnected and how the characters, kind of like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, were all connected in their own way. And it's stunning. It's beautiful. It's kind of hard to read at times. There are a couple of stories that are really gut-wrenching, but if you have any interest in books that talk about the climate crisis, books that are not traditionally written, this book is for you. It's stunning. I highly recommend, and I look forward to reading more from this author for sure in 2024. The next book that I'm so excited to talk about, and so proud of myself that I actually finally read this year, it's A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. A Court of Silver Flames is book 4 of the ACOTAR series, and this story finally follows our girl Nesta and our boy Cassian, and I absolutely loved this, and for reasons that I didn't expect to love it for. So I took forever to read this. I started reading it at the beginning of the year, and it was like March-ish, which is when I moved to Denver. So I had been about like 200 pages in and was like kind of bored and maybe just not feeling it at the time. Didn't pick it back up until maybe a month ago. I think I read it a couple weeks ago. I don't know. Time is a construct. This was incredible, and what I loved the most about it was the girl power found family thread that Nesta was like finding these girlfriends and finding solace in the house. I'm actually really embarrassed that I even said that the first 200 pages were boring, because I don't know, this time around when I picked it back up, and I did start at the beginning, I didn't like start 200 pages in. I absolutely loved it this time around. I just want 20,000 more books in this series. I'm so happy that I was able to get this in, because A House of Flame and Shadow, book 3 of Crescent City, we're almost there, guys. 30 more freaking days. Loved this, got this in. This is a great segue to the next book that is on this list. Speaking of Sarah J. Maas and Crescent City, the next book that I want to talk about is Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas as well. This is book 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know, book 4 or 5. Again, the novellas and the prequels and whatever, I lose track, but whatever. This has been my favorite installment of Throne of Glass so far. At the time that I'm recording this, I am currently on the tandem read. I'm about 100 pages in on each book, Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. And it's going great. I think it's really fun to do a tandem read, like switching back and forth. I've never done this before, so I'm really enjoying that. But Queen of Shadows has by far been the most action-packed, the romance, Rowan. I don't want to talk too much about it because I know that a lot of people are still making their way through either Throne of Glass or ACOTAR or Crescent City or whatever in preparation for A House of Flame and Shadow, so I don't want to get into any spoilers, but 100,000% this has been my favorite of TOG so far. So Sarah J. Maas, continue doing whatever you're doing, and I will keep giving you my money. The next 2 books that I want to talk about are the first 2 books in the Shadowborn saga by John Gwynne, and that is The Shadow of the Gods and The Hunger of the Gods. Again, don't want to get too crazy because I think I've talked about them like 2 or 3 times at this point. I think that should go to say how fantastic they are. You should be reading these. Book 3 allegedly is coming out October 2024, which I know a lot of people are super pumped about. And the covers, like if these covers don't make you want to read these books, ooh, that's creepy. If these covers don't make you want to read these books, nothing I say will, but please, for the love, read them. They're fantastic. It's high fantasy, Nordic, icy, cold, moody, gruesome, Game of Thrones fantasy at its finest. And I am so excited to read more John Gwynne in 2024 as well. He's got a number of other series that are even finished, and this might just be my year that I read nothing but fantasy. I don't know. It's just all that I want ever, and there's so much amazing fantasy coming out in 2024. So having book 3 finishing up this trilogy, especially after the cliffhanger, if you have read these 2 books in The Hunger of the Gods, John Gwynne, I love you. I can't wait to read the rest. of this series. Next book I want to talk about is Misery by Stephen King, and I have to bring this up again because it's winter in Colorado and because this book slaps. This is by far my favorite Stephen King that I have read, and I'm so excited to cozy up at some point with the snowy weather soon and watch the movie for the first time. I absolutely loved this. It's short, it's quick, it's fast paced. I was actually getting scared. Like, I don't get scared by horror movies or like horror books. Like, I love horror, but I don't get that visceral reaction anymore. A jump scare will get me for sure, but this, the audiobook was so good, it gave me a visceral reaction. So if you haven't read any Stephen King yet, please pick this up. You're gonna love it. It's amazing. And then you get to watch a movie about it with the Queen, Kathy Bates. Thank you, Stephen King. Thank you, Kathy Bates. The next book that I want to talk about is Crying in Hmart by Michelle Zauner, and this is a memoir by a young Korean-American woman that is basically dealing with the trauma of losing her mother, who she had a really interesting relationship with. I think it goes without saying that like all of the books on this list are 5 stars. I give every memoir that I read 5 stars because I think the people that go through some of the things that I've read memoirs about and have the bravery to like share their stories with the world, like, you get 1,000,000 stars anyway. And it's kind of like, everyone agrees that it's kind of hard and like weird to rate someone's personal story. But anyway, Crying in Hmart is so good. Michelle has a beautiful way of telling the story of her mom in a truthful and honest way. Like, all the bad shit that she has to talk about, she talks about, but you also, like, I was crying while I was listening to this on audio because they also have a really close and beautiful and loving relationship. They bond over food heavily, their shared experiences with immersing themselves in Korean culture, even though they live in the United States. I loved everything about this. If you haven't read this memoir yet, I highly recommend it. It is phenomenal, and the audiobook narrated by Michelle Zauner herself, 5 million bajillion stars. It's one of the best audiobooks that I've ever listened to. The next book that I want to talk about is Mayfly by CJ Lead, which I brought up in my favorite reads of the year so far. This book is not for the faint of heart. I suggest that you look up your trigger warnings before you read it. It's got some pretty intense body horror and like weird sexual things, so if those are not for you, please continue forward. This book is phenomenal. It is horror at its finest. It is so lush and so beautiful, the writing and the location. It's very glamorous, and it's also really disgusting. This book is so good. I loved it. Our main character, Maeve, is a princess at what is clearly a ripoff of Disney World, and she works there, Disneyland, because I live in California. She works there with her best friend Kate, and then Kate's brother Gideon comes to town, and every horrible thing that Maeve has ever fantasized about doing, she starts doing it. It's off the rails, it's horrific, it's gruesome. I absolutely loved it, and I can't wait to have my hands on a physical copy for my shelves and to read more by CJ Lead, hopefully in 2024. The next book that I want to talk about, sorry, just noticed there is a rip in this, which I am highly upset about. Okay, we're moving on. Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. This is book 2 and the finishing touches of the Shepherd King duology, with book 1 being One Dark Window. I read last year and absolutely loved. 5 out of 5 stars again for book 2. This was such a good way to end the story. I loved the love story that we got out of it. Just her writing is so great. It's really accessible fantasy. If you are not familiar with like romantasy as a genre, this is a really mild on the romance, heavy on the fantasy, really easy to understand magical world. If those are things that you're looking for in 2024, please pick up this duology. It's fantastic, and I cannot wait to read more by Rachel Gillig. The next book/books that I want to talk about is the Orphan X series by Greg Hurwitz. I am absolutely in my dad thriller era, and I've never been happier about it. I'm screaming it from the rooftops. Even though it might just be me, it's fine. I'm gonna talk about what I want to talk about here. Okay, thank you. This series is so good. If you like the movie John Wick, if you like anything action-packed, assassin, like mystery, murder type of action, book, these are great. I listened to every single one of them on audio, and the audiobooks are fantastic, phenomenal, perfect, wonderful, really easy to listen to, really easy to follow if you're doing like some other activity. And there is a book coming out in February, I believe, so this series is still continuing. The other great thing about books like these that that are a series but not necessarily connected is that you could pick up at any point in the series and get, I think, the same experience as if you started at book 1. Yeah, I enjoyed this series quite a bit, and I can't wait for the next book to come out in February. The next book that I want to talk about is Slooh Foot by Bram, and I'm really sad to say that I didn't get a chance to read Krampus, even though I had it. I had it and then I lost it. Unfortunately, I started doing my holiday vlog that I was talking about, and I said I wasn't going to talk about this, but you know what? I'm feeling it. Part of the story, whatever. I did get through A Merry Little Meet Cute and Dying for Christmas that my friend got me from Bookstagram, and I was gonna move on to Krampus, but on Christmas Day, I got a phone call from my dad who lives in Greece, and my grandmother, my Yaya, I don't know why I'm whispering, it's because I don't start crying. My Yaya passed away, so I was not doing too hot, still am not, and I gave up on that vlog. So needless to say, I didn't try to force myself to read Krampus on Christmas Day because I got some news that was not great, and this person, my Yaya, like, is just one of my favorite people that I've ever had the good fortune to have in my life or to know, and the fact that I had her for 31 years is incredible, and I'm very thankful for that. But whew, what a Debbie Downer, okay? But clearly we're happy to moving on to 2024. Life must go on. So yeah, I didn't get a chance to read Krampus, but I'm keeping it on my shelves because the cover's amazing and we're gonna get to it next year for Christmas. Slooh Foot was so good. This is witchy feminism at its finest, and if that doesn't become a genre, I don't know what I'm gonna do with myself. This was so great. There's artwork, it's a nice floppy paperback. It's really easy to read, and I have heard some reviews that some people think that the kind of like almost dual stories we have going on, the goat man creature and like his woodland like creature history origin story versus main character Abatha's like spiral into being her witchiest self, like those two storylines don't go together very well. I personally think they were fantastic together, but I can totally see how it would be a deterrent. So it is a weird book. It's weird, but it's really, really great. 5 stars. I read it around Halloween time and it was the perfect addition to my October TBR. And the last book that I want to talk about is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I listened to this on audio a few weeks ago and it was my favorite romance of the year by far. It is a sapphic romance between our main character August, who meets what she thinks is just the love of her life, Jane, on the train in New York City. She's just moved there to kind of escape a rocky relationship with her mom and unfinished school dreams. And this book took a turn that I did not expect. I don't want to talk about it because it was a huge shock to me. I did this thing in 2023 where I tried not to read reviews like right before I went into a book. So I went into a lot of books completely blind this year, and this was one of them. And the twist that it took, I thought was so good and so cute. I also didn't know that Casey McQuiston is the author of Red, White, and Royal Blue, which I have not read yet, but I have on audio ready to go, and I'm so excited to get to. I think Casey McQuiston is going to be one of my new favorite contemporary romance authors. She knocked it out of the park. This book was sweet. It was mildly spicy, like in a very romantic way, which I felt was really nice, and it was fun. It was realistic. The jokes were good. The characters were great. I absolutely loved this and definitely plan on rereading it in 2024. And with that, we have reached the end of my list of my favorite books of 2023. I hope that everyone has a safe and happy and fun New Year's Eve tonight and New Year's Day tomorrow. Be safe. If you're drinking, please call an Uber, call a friend. Be safe, be smart, enjoy yourselves. So with that, please have a happy new year, and I will see you in the next video, which will be in 2024.